Okay, so we are up and running. We're recording now. And is your slide deck not working now?
You talking to me?
Yes. Is it?
Oh, I didn't. I didn't put it up as yet. I was just gonna tell everybody hi first because I think my video.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
All right. So before we get started, hi everybody, because I won't be able to see you during my video. Thank you for coming. How is everybody?
All right.
Okay, good. All right, so I will go ahead and share my slide deck. I'm excited. Oh, and by the way, hi to everybody online as well. Pardon my manners. I know you are here, even though I can't see you. So let me attempt to show my slide deck and see if this works. Okay, what do you guys see?
Mico Yuk is now presenting desktop.
Live extreme dashboard makeover.
Okay, good. All right, so good evening, everybody. I'm about 2 hours earlier because I'm on the other side. My name is Mico Yuk, and my topic today for you guys, thanks to Wes, is live extreme dashboard makeover webinar, but it's with a twist. And the reason I said it's with a twist is that I do realize that this is a Power BI quote unquote user group, but typically when I present, I'm less focused on particular technology and more focused on the principles, just to set expectations around how do you create stories, how do you do design. So I just hope everybody's okay with that. I don't want to waste anybody's time. It's not going to be a technical session. It's going to be more focused on principles and best practices. So is everybody okay with that?
Sounds great.
Are we good? Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so just a little bit of a quick background. So who am I? I think some of you may have met me in the Microsoft hemisphere when I did the keynote for the past BA conference. I know that that's where I met Wes and a number of people. So I run a company called BI Brains. We are located in Atlanta, and we have a few offices in other parts of the world, like the UK and Jamaica and South Africa as of recent. And so what I became known for, I've been in the industry for about 10 years, is we have something called the BI Dashboard Formula Methodology. Some of the principles I'm going to teach you guys is from there. Just kind of skipping through because I want to get to the content, but I've worked with a good bit of the Fortune 500 companies. I put some names on here, done a couple different 100 dashboards, which is why a lot of the principles that I'm teaching is tool agnostic. You definitely could do them in Power BI, but honestly, you could just as easily do them in Excel. In addition, I've taught thousands and thousands of students across the world, including recently at Power Summit, the one they had in Phoenix. I'm also going to be presenting at the Amsterdam event. I don't know if anybody's coming to that one. The one in March. I think it's called Data and BI Summit, or they changed the name. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I do. We have a North America version of that. I was going to try to get my boss to pay, but wouldn't send me over.
Oh, okay. So the North America one, I think the North America one is, I'm trying to remember when. I don't remember. I know it's a little bit later on the year. So presented at a few. Yes, correct. Thank you. And so if you go online, you can connect to me, Mico Yuk, and you'll kind of see some of the stuff that I share around these topics. My core focus is anything data related, particularly with data storytelling and data visualization. Okay, so what I'm going to show you guys, as I mentioned to you, is that being more focused on the principles, one of the things that we have taught across the world that's been very successful is our BI Dashboard Formula Methodology. So my goal today is I'm going to teach you guys 4 of the core principles of this. And my hope is that by implementing all or even a portion of this, it'll literally help you just produce better data visualizations, okay? So you could see here, I put a diagram of the methodology. The high level steps are step 1 is planning, step 2 is scoping, then prototyping, then development, and then the go live. Particularly today, we're gonna just focus a little bit more in the blue to orange area in the principles that I'm gonna show you, because I think that those are where you're gonna get your biggest bang for your buck. Okay, so what we're gonna do today is we're gonna review 3 dashboard makeovers. Actually, I think it might be 2 dashboard makeovers. I had just removed 1. You guys are gonna gain some best practices, and then I'm hoping that you guys will be able to do it yourself. Okay, so are we ready? Can the guys online hear me as well? Are we good?
They're all muted, but I'm seeing that working, so you're set.
Okay, and you guys can hear me clearly, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, 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 good. All right. It's just a little bit hard to talk into the screen and not have anybody to see or hear. Okay, so my promise to you today, because I want to make sure you guys get insane value out of this, is one of the biggest fears when it comes to design a dashboard is not knowing where to start. And this has been something consistently that we've seen. And so one of my goals is I'm hoping to eliminate that problem by giving you guys a simple in-house process that we have. And to take a step back from just watching a slide deck, one of the main kind of stopping points for a lot of people when it comes to approaching visualization is they don't like to have the blank white screen. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit about what happens before you start, and then we're going to talk about how to kind of improve your design once you do get started. Okay, so let's start with step number 1. So the first step in approaching any type of data viz, as I said, I'll just make it Power BI referenceable. So your Power BI project is first to make sure that you actually qualify your project. And this is something that a lot of people seem to skip. And as a result, we have a lot of data visualizations that are either meaningless or useless or not as useful as they should be. So the first thing that's important, which is hard for people to digest, is you must accept the reality that some BI projects, guys, are just not worth doing, okay? And this is one of the reasons why so many of them fail. So let me go through 3 reasons, and these are 3 things I want you to take away, and these are 3 reasons why you shouldn't start the project. Number 1 is too many audiences, and I'll go through these in detail. Number 2 is limited resources, and number 3 is if you're missing your top KPIs. So what do I mean by too many audiences? So here's a good example of this, right? One of the things that we learn that's really important is we have a rule of 2 that we teach, okay? Wes, can you guys see my video, or you can only see the presentation?
We see your face as well as the screen.
Okay, good. So we have a rule of 2. And when I say 2, this is where a lot of people struggle, is we say that you want to only have 2 audiences for whatever you're building. So what does that mean? Well, when we say 2 audiences, we mean, for instance, that you, instead of building it for everyone, we mean 2 audiences in terms of LOB and in terms of job title. So let me explain what that means. When it comes to line of businesses, don't build a dashboard for everyone. So if you look on the screen, you'll see here, there's financial, there's the customer, the process, the HR. This is a recipe for disaster, right? If you build data visualizations in Power BI and you build it for a very broad audience and think that one shoe is going to fit all, no one's actually going to use it. The second rule of 2 comes with people's job titles. So a good example is you go down the hierarchy for most companies, you have your CEO, you have your maybe your VPs, you then have your directors, you then have your managers. You want to make sure that you only build 2 consecutive. So you can build a dashboard for the CEO and the VPs, but do not build the same dashboards for the CEO and, let's say, the managers. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
This is
Don't cross managerial levels.
Yes, this is really important. It was a key learning that we had, because once we noticed that the user adoption and just the overall confusion dramatically increased and complexity when you cross over either the the job roles or the LOBs. Now, let me address the LOBs as well. So a good example is, listen, sales and marketing, those can go together on a visualization fairly well. Sales and HR, probably not. Right? So when you're also doing the LOBs, the best case scenario is to keep it to 1 line of business. But if you're going to do 2, make sure they're 2 related, right? They're just some things that don't go together. So we found by kind of sticking to this rule of 2, it definitely removes a lot of the complexity and it makes it more tailored focus. So that's the first qualification that you need to have for your project before moving forward. The second qualification is very fun. So I call this the Swiss knife approach. Some of you may be familiar with this. So this is where you are the admin, the developer, the architect, the analyst. You clean the floors, you fix the printers. Can anybody in the room say aye? Is anybody here a Swiss knife? Right. Okay. So if you are doing, no, let me put this into context. If you are doing a small, cute little Power BI project on your own, you may be able to get away with this, but it's costing you a lot of time. One of the things that is very important is how many of you today are serving users? How many of you are building stuff for users? Just say I, because I can't see you. Anybody building stuff? Right. Okay, so we're in the same position, right? So because you're building stuff for users, one of the things that you guys probably have figured out very quickly is that users have become high maintenance, instant gratification monsters. I don't know if any of you have users like that, but they want everything yesterday. So the reason why I put limited resources as a problem is because when it comes to building out, if you are the Swiss knife, you actually become a weak link in the bunch. It takes too long to get things out. So one of the things that we definitely recommend is that if you're going to approach a project of any size, to be very frank, make sure that you have the right resources. Being a Swift knife becomes very difficult. It becomes a bottleneck. And the results of it could be that the users feel like, geez, I saw the dashboard guy. He said he was going to go get the data and he's trying to fix the security or something, but where's the stuff that we asked for? And so you don't want to do this. So you want to make sure that before you go forward, you have the right people to help with this stuff so that you can spend your time in front of the business wowing them with your pretty Power BI dashboards. So this is really important. Then the third qualification, right, and the third reason we see a lot of projects fail is people don't have their top KPIs. So particularly in this age of data discovery, and don't get me wrong, I like data discovery. The problem I have with data discovery is that it puts people into deep analysis paralysis, and then you end up getting either everything or nothing of value. So one of the high recommendations as a part of the qualification process to make sure that whatever you're building is useful and successful is to make sure that you identify your top KPIs before you get started. Okay, so very, very important stuff. So you could see here where I put, this is just an example of a sheet just kind of listing out the KPIs. Now, if you guys look at this sheet, are you able to read the text? Because I want to point something out. Are you guys able to read the text?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so do you see where I pointed out here, not a KPI? Do you see where it says percentage trade spend versus target? How many of you thought that was a KPI or think that's a KPI? Anybody? Okay, good. Now, one of the common mistakes we see is that people mistake chart views and things like this. This is a chart view for a KPI. So it's very important as well that when you're doing measurements, when you're working with users, that you identify that when they tell you, oh, my top KPI is sales forecast or sales versus budget, that is not a KPI, okay? That is actually a chart view. A better example of a KPI is you could see this bottom one here in number 4 is deductions as a percentage of sales, right? So if you actually look at the first 3 KPIs on here, I put examples. These first 3 are chart views, something very common. The 4th one is actually the only KPI that you have on here. So again, when we say missing top KPIs, you have to make sure you actually have KPIs, and we tend to find that people mask over that, and as a result, they just start building all these chart views, and then you end up with a very convoluted visualization, okay? So this is the third qualification. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give Wes, and I don't know his mechanism. I assume he'll send it out. We have a planning guide sheet that we give away. We actually stopped giving it away online, but I'll be happy to give it to you guys. So instead of just telling you guys about this, I'm going to give you guys the planning guide sheet. And what you do is when you fill it out, it'll automatically help you to qualify each of these segments. Does anybody want the planning guide? I think it could be useful. Don't worry, I actually have more freebies. So I'll leave that on Wes to distribute it in whatever channel you have, particularly for this group. But everything I just showed you, if you go through, you could see it's simple and you fill it out. It'll help you quickly to qualify, and you can remember what I said. And the one thing to remember is that if you're struggling to complete this, your project's not ready. Don't start building Power BI. Don't start building anything, okay? So I'm going to give that to you guys to make it a little bit easier. So let's go over the tips here. So the number 1 tip is you should avoid having more than 2 audiences for a single dashboard. I think we're clear on that. 2 LOBs, two consecutive lines, that's important. The second thing is, and I put this in, I did this in here, you need to confirm all your resources before starting the project. So again, small project, you're the Swiss knife, that's still, I highly don't recommend it, because I recommend that if you're the dashboard person, you're doing Power BI, you spend your time in front of the user and keeping them happy. But if you are that person, you have to make sure you're moving fast. The third thing is, the third tip with qualifying your project is you need to identify 3 to 5 top KPIs before you move to gather requirements. So very, very important. I gave you a slight example of a KPI versus a non-KPI, which is a common mistake, but make sure that your KPIs are smart. Peter Drucker has the, specific, measurable, accurate result, and I think time-oriented. And actually, in my third point within this presentation, I'm going to show you guys my little trick on how to make KPIs actionable. Okay, and the most important.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead,
Sorry,
please.
Mico, we have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you go back to those KPIs? Because I got a little confused about why those were not KPIs, because some of them look like things that my customers would a lot of times think are KPIs, and why would you say they aren't?
So it's very common. That's why I use it. Sorry, I'm glossing over. We have a lot of content, so let me slow down a little bit. Okay, so when you ask people questions like what they want to see, right? And I'm not even addressing the questions we ask on this in particular. Don't ask them that question again, by the way. Don't ask them what they want to see. Never, never, never ask that question. That's a different discussion. But right now, putting your notes, Mico said never ask people what you want to see, how do you want it to look, and what you want to measure, because these are the type of answers that you get. So the issue with the first one, M to D sales versus the lock forecast, that's not a KPI, that's a chart view, right? So what the question you want to ask is, okay, I understand that you want to see the sales versus the forecast, but help me understand what change in that chart view are you going to react to? Like, what are you looking for? And typically, if you ask them why 5 to 7 times, you're going to actually get an answer. So this is a chart view. This is not a KPI. Take, for example, now on the bottom where you have deductions as a percentage of sales. Now, this is more very specific, right? So instead of just saying, look, I'm looking to see sales, and then they're going in to try to find the deductions, you're very specifically looking for something within the sales. So this is not a perfect KPI, but I put these goals up here that if a user gives you these chart views, you have to recalibrate the conversation and say, listen, that is just a chart view. I need to understand, what are you looking for with sales and forecast? If you cannot get that answer, you ask it a different way. You say, okay, if the sales is exceeding the forecast, what do you do? Number 1. If the sales is below the forecast, what do you do? Number 2. If this hasn't changed, what do you do? Now, let me give you the logic behind this without going down. You guys can agree with me that every number only has 3 different states, right? It either goes up, it goes down, or it stays the same. Does everybody agree with me?
Yep.
Okay, so the way to figure out what the user wants, if you get these views, is to then ask them, like I said, what do you do when sales exceeds forecast, when sales is below forecast, or when it doesn't change? And typically that answer will start to cough up what the real important thing is. So case in point, well, if sales goes over forecast, then that means we're over budget and we have to do something. So you want to see sales versus forecast, but maybe what they want to see is just the variance, or maybe they want to see an amount of change. Instead of giving them a chart where they have to evaluate that, why not give them just that change? Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's why I hate these, because, again, I can go on a tangent. These give people work. These are just trends, right? We want to give people answers. So a good example is, let's take deductions as a percentage of sales. If we were to really break this down into the type of KPI that I like, which I'm going to show you guys how to do in the third part of this, this would become actionable and very measurable, and it'd be super easy to visualize. So I'll cover that in number 3, but does that answer your question why these chart views are not KPIs?
Yes, it has explained. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, really good question. So I will give Wes this. There's other goodies coming up, so don't fall asleep on me here. I'll give Wes this, and there's one more thing as well. Okay, the other thing is, I don't have time to go into it, but you also want to make sure that you have a good single goal statement. Again, I don't have time to go into it, but I'll give you guys some further context go down. All right, so talking about KPIs, which is the next segment, right? Because I know people always ask, let's say you do have a KPI, right? Let's say you have a common KPI, whether it's, let's use the KPI margin or sales, right? I know you guys have heard the terms, well, you know, I want to be measuring or creating actionable KPIs. Is anybody dealing with that word actionable? I want my data to be actionable. Is anybody hearing that from users?
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, right. I want everything to be actionable. So the question then is, well, what's actionable and how do you get there? So I'm going to show you guys a little trick that people like. It's a method that I created myself that's very simple. And you don't just do it on KPIs. You could do it on, you know, on goals. You could do it on trends. I'm going to show you guys a bit of a trick you're going to like. But first of all, because I always have people who ask me what KPIs are, let me use this definition by Bernard Marr. So what is a KPI? A KPI is the most important performance information that enables organizations or their stakeholders to understand whether the org is on track or not. Okay, so I wanted to define it because I do have one person that's always going, Mico, what's a KPI? So now that we know what a KPI is, why do you need actionable KPIs? Well, the main reason that actionable KPIs became so important and you need them is because they, number one, keep your audience engaged and they show value, right? I think we all know that the days of simply monitoring data are pretty much long gone. So actionable is the key word, make my data actionable. So the question is, how do you do that? So let me show you guys a quick example. So this is an example of something that was built and we were handed this and told, you know, these executives, they're not happy with this. I mean, you could look at this, there's something special about this. And, you know, when they gave it to us, we were thinking, well, obviously, right? They were saying it wasn't actionable, it's just boring. This was essentially their quote unquote kind of launch pad for how they enter. So we basically took this and we took that same interface and we transformed it into this. So you could see here, what we did is this is exactly the same page as we essentially decided that instead of having this dead interface, we're going to take these nice micro pieces of data with Power BI and be able to extract it and really bring that to life. Okay. So we went from like dead KPI tiles. So these are actually KPIs, or at least they call them KPIs. No comments. And we took those KPI tiles and we basically woke them up. So your question should be, okay, Mico, great. We know the value of actionable, but then how do we actually create something actionable, right? How do we take a piece of data, a metric, a KPI, a goal, and how do we make it actionable? So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a step here. I'm going to take a drink of water, and then I'll show you guys a little bit of a hack that I use in order to make any KPI actionable. While I'm drinking water, is there any questions so far? And am I going too fast?
Getting thumbs up on the pace. Looks good.
Okay, good. I get a little excited about this topic, so I can zoom through very fast. Okay, so there's 3 steps that you need to take, and I'll show you. It's kind of fun. So the first step is that you want to take one of your top KPIs, right? And you want to answer 3 simple questions, and then you want to rename them. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say we start up with this KPI margins, right? Profit margins, right? Now, what we want to do is we want to take this KPI under metric, guys. It could be a metric, right? And we want to ask ourselves 3 simple questions. And if you're taking pictures, this might be a good time. This is probably a slide you want to take a picture of. We call this the WHW method. So the first question you ask yourself, the first W is what? The second letter is H, which is how much? And the third letter, which is another W, is by when. So let me show you how this works. So if we have this, you know, very kind of vague KPI, which is called profit margins, we ask ourselves, well, what do we need to do with profit margins? And the answer was, well, we need to increase our profit margins. Then we ask ourselves, how much? The answer is by 25%. And then we ask ourselves, by when? And the answer is quote unquote next year. So let's say it's 2017 or 27. Doesn't really matter. It's just an example. Okay. So what we do, right, is we then take that KPI. You want to take a screenshot of this, and using the WHW method, we completely transform the name of the KPI. So this is one of the core principles within our methodology that we teach. And if you see here, the KPI now becomes increase profit margin by 25% by 2017. Now, if we go back, right, let's just think about this. If I came to you as a user and I said, Wes, I want you to visualize profit margin, what happens today is you go back to the data and you pull everything you can underneath the sun, right? Because you're trying to go, oh, profit margin. Well, you may need to look at trends. You may need to look at changes. You may need to look at everything. If I come to you and say, listen, what I need to track and look at and monitor is whether or not we're increasing our profit margins. Well, no, our goal is that we want to increase our profit margins by 25% by 2017. I can guarantee you that Wes knows exactly how to visualize this, right? So there's a key takeaway here, and I don't know if I have it in this part. If you do not stop time to make your metrics actionable, you are literally making data visualization hard. So there's a key takeaway from here that I want to state, and I want everybody to listen to this very carefully. Visualization is hard because your metrics are not properly defined and named. If you name your metrics properly, similar to what I showed you here, it becomes a lot easier to visualize. So again, I go back to my example. If I go to Wes and I say, Wes, my KPI is profit margin, give me a visualization and show me what you have. He goes out and starts pulling everything underneath the sun, which is what happens a lot today, right? A mask underneath the name of data discovery. If I come to him and say, look, what I really need to track is we have to increase our profit margin by 25% by 2017. I think one of the things that he will know is he said, okay, so you're looking to see whether or not there's an increase, which means if it's not on track, then you need to react. But the beauty about this is a little bit deeper, right? Is if you know what the overall goal is, the power of this is you can then take this goal, guys, break it up into incremental and almost create a daily goal or a weekly goal or a monthly goal so that it's more achievable. So this is what I did essentially was Peter Drucker has a SMART method for KPIs. I couldn't remember it. So honestly, I just hacked it and created a WHW method and I've been sharing it and people have loved it. So this method I recommend you do, just plug in your metric, answer these 3 questions, change the name of it, and then go to visualize it and find the data. If you do this, it'll save you mountains of time. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. Is there any questions on this? Does this make sense?
Yes.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, and Wes, if there's questions coming in on the online, just remember I can't see it, so you'll have to probably dictate to me.
I'm monitoring that. They're good.
Okay, awesome. All right, so this step, I call it the WHW method, but it's really just a hack for Peter Drucker's SMART KPI. But I recommend with anything you're trying to look at, go back to your user and say, look, I just have 3 simple questions. You could make it look pretty like this. If you could just answer these for me, it's going to make my life so much easier. And then it makes it easier for you to determine what you need to show them. So my tips on when it comes to creating actionable KPIs are 1, KISS, keep it simple, superstar, because you guys are all superstars. Number 2, right? You're rock stars. You guys are in the room and we're sitting here, we're figuring out how to serve people better with our superpower, which is creating amazing Power BI data visualizations. Number 2 is not all KPIs or metrics can be made actionable. So I'm going to pause for a second and state this. Similar to number 1, if your user, please hear this clearly, is unable to answer those 3 questions, do not proceed to go. You have to understand how painful this is. If they're unable to tell you what action you need to take with it, the first W, how much by when, you are going to be forever just throwing data on the screen, hoping for the best. So my recommendation is that if you can really push to get these answered, rename the entire measurement and put it on the dashboard with the new name. Guys, you literally want to remove any type of questions or doubt, right? You don't want anyone to come in and try to think, I saw this chart, but I'm not sure what I'm looking at or looking for. So it's very important. The other element I didn't go over is using right brain words when possible. And then number 4 is keeping your actionable KPI count under 5. Okay, this could be hard for some people. Gartner said that you need to have 3 to 5 KPIs, and there's a whole thoughts around it, but you need to keep it under 5. Okay, I want to have a little bit of fun with you guys. Do you guys have a pencil and paper?
Yes. I think most folks do. Yep.
Okay, good. Could you get a clean sheet with a pencil? We're going to do a quick visual exercise. I'm not going to change the screen, but I want to demonstrate what I mean by words. Guys online, do you have a little bit of a paper with a pencil or some kind of Post-it?
We have some folks online that looks like somebody's starting to type a question.
Okay. I'm going to run a
So
little
here's the,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, we got an online question that says, what are we going to do with non-actionable KPIs if the customer is not clear about it?
So what you do at that point, because we can never say no, right? We are in the BI hospitality business. Don't ever forget that. We're a double.
Yep.
Okay, so that means that you never ever say no. So what you kindly say to them is, listen, you know, and it depends on the level, right? If they're senior, you got to try to dig in the data and hope for the best. But you could say to them, listen, we went through about 10 of your measurements and 8 of them are ready to go. I know exactly what you're looking for. And when I come back, we're going to basically create something amazing so you can make sure you're tracking. The 2 that are not ready, you tell them flat, I can give you maybe a data dump. Do you want to look at the data and see if you can understand? I highly recommend you keep it off of a visual. The reason being is that if it's not clear, they are going to drive you crazy, because what you're going to hear is, yeah, but we don't look at it that way. Or I don't, you know, that's where, and you guys know, right? I call this the requirements treadmill, right? You just can't jump off. This is why projects never end. So you have to find a way to seclude it, take it out of a visual. Seriously, just don't put it on there. Put a line saying, if it's not actionable, guys, you know, tell them the screen is only, you know, 8x5. On a phone, it's 7 inches, it's 10. We use this all the time. The real estate is shrinking. Let me run with the ones that work. And this one, maybe we could look at the data together, but do not put it on there.
We have one more question in the room.
Sure, please.
Okay, what are the right brain words? What are some right brain
I'm
words?
about to do an exercise. I want to do an exercise to demonstrate it, not just tell you guys. A great question. I'm gonna do that right now if you guys are ready. Did I answer that last question?
I think so. I haven't got any feedback from the person who asked yet.
Okay. All right. So
Yes. Yes.
I did. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So just remember, never say no. Always be suggestive. We are in a hospitality business. Okay. So I want to do an exercise. I put number 3 on here, and we're gonna have a little bit of fun. Does everybody have a pen or pencil and a piece of paper that's clean?
Looks like it.
Okay, good. All right, guys. So do me a favor. I want you to draw the first picture. Do it in, I don't know if you have a big sheet of paper. You're gonna need like 3 to 4 pieces of paper or different spaces. On a small section, draw the first picture that comes to mind, and it has to be a single picture when I give you these words. The first word is increase. So draw a single picture, the first one that comes to mind when you think of the word increase. And Wes, you'll have to kind of tell me when people look up when you're done, or type in I'm done, and Wes will let me know.
I think we're good.
Okay, online, are we good? Okay, so let me take a random guess. You guys could raise your hands. I can't see you, but I want to at least hear or say me. How many of you got an arrow?
All the hands went up.
Aye.
Okay, all right, that's what I thought. Online, is it the same thing?
I haven't got feedback online yet, but I'm getting some responses now.
Okay, perfect. All right. So do me a favor. Could you either hide or get another sheet of paper or fold that over wherever you drew that little arrow? I want to get it out of visibility. Now, I want you to do the exact same thing, and I want you to do it for the word fresh. And Wes, you have to just let me know when.
They're pondering this one. This isn't as easy.
Single picture, guys. I don't want any, we don't need a Picasso. I just need a single little picture. It doesn't have to be pretty. So the word fresh.
I see a lot of quizzical looks right now.
Yeah. I'll explain why. Just the word fresh. Just bear with me. Wes, just let me know when you kind of see.
Couple are still working. A couple are sort of leaned back, pondering. A few are finished.
Okay, don't overthink it. It's just the word fresh. What's the first picture that
Okay.
comes to mind? Okay, so how many of you got a fruit? How many of you drew a fruit?
Had a couple hands here. I think
Okay,
3,
how
maybe
many?
4.
Yeah, I'm doing like psychic, right? How many of you drew a leaf or something green?
A few more.
Anybody have a sunshine?
Now, you can't put your hand up twice. She said one visual.
No, I put flowers with the sun.
Oh, it was a combination
I was
visual.
gonna get
Okay.
flowers. Yeah, I was gonna. Flowers is gonna be my last one. Okay, so how many of you have flowers? It's a flower, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so like a flower. Yep.
Flower with sun.
Did I
Flower was-
cover everybody or did
I
somebody?
didn't get anything. I didn't get anything. I just got blank.
Okay, that's fair. All right. So I want you guys to do one more word, and then I'm gonna explain how this works. So put this one out of visibility, put something over it, or just cover it up. I want you to do the word grow. So draw a single picture that comes to mind when you hear the word grow. GROW. Wes are they still looking at the screen or everybody's drawing?
They're drawing. They're drawing.
Good. Online, are we good? Are we drawing?
I'm not getting feedback from them. I think they're busy drawing. They're not typing.
Okay, good. All right, so just let me know. Usually takes like a minute or two.
Okay, we got some response online. I think most of the folks in the room are done.
Okay, good. So
Okay.
with the word grow, how many of you got another plant or a flower or a fruit? Anybody get a plant?
Couple of the same hands. Yep.
Okay. How many of you got like a fruit or, a height of a child? Height. Anybody?
Another couple of hands there. Yep.
Okay, good. How many of you got an arrow?
Yep.
Couple arrows. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let me explain what this
On an
happened.
inclined- on an inclined plane.
Yep.
You got a what?
Couple of folks online approving too. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so let me explain what I just did. So what I just did was a left brain versus right brain exercise. And let me explain it. When I did the word increase, many of you got an arrow or something that was like maybe charts with an arrow. The reason why you have that is that appeals to your left brain. And why do I say that? An arrow is dead, right? So a lot of the words we use in corporate, increase, decrease, they actually are not memorable and they don't register in our brain. They're left brain thinking, right? When I said the word fresh, a number of you switched over in your brain and you began to draw a picture that was memorable, right? So a flower has a smell, it has a look, a feel. And then when I said the word grow, most of you stayed on your right brain side, which is where you stayed in that mode of drawing something that was visual. It had a smell, a color, a scent. Only a few of you went back to your left brain and said, oh, that's just an arrow. Here's the big difference. The right brain words that we use, which were fresh and grow, instead of saying increase, if you replace words increase with words like grow, or instead of saying reduce, we say cut, you actually are better able to create a right brain, using right brain words, create a memory in people's brain. And so one of the things that we teach, and this was why I put it in here, let me go back. One of the things that we teach is that even here where I have the word increase, what we would do before this goes to prime time is we change this word to grow or to boost or to a word that has a visual, because science has proven that it makes it stick in your brain. Did everybody get me on that one?
Definitely. Yep.
Yes?
Yep. Lot of heads.
Okay, good. So even though this is very simple, so let me give you another example, right? My favorite words that are useless. Let's do one more word. Actually, this is kind of fun. Let's do two more. So hide what you have. I'll give you guys an example. So let's do a single picture for the word optimize. Optimize. Remember I said a single picture. Don't draw me no Picasso diagram. Wes, are you doing exercises too?
I'm monitoring for you.
Check, preventing cheating.
Okay.
Someone's copying their work. All right, I think we got our drawings.
We do. Okay. So I can only make a guess. Can someone describe what they have? Do people have transitions here, something going from small to big? How many of you have that?
Or big, small, boom.
Big,
Yeah.
big, small. Yeah? Okay, how many of you have nothing? I'm just curious.
Couple hands going up on nothing.
Yeah, how many hands?
I think it was like 3, 4.
Okay. How many of
And
you
nothing.
how many of you have, give me a description. Anything unique?
A target?
A target?
Diamond.
Okay. Optimized.
A circuit, diamond, a loop.
Right. Okay. So you have a target. Just slow down a little bit. I hear a target. What else?
Circuit,
A circuit. Okay. What else?
diamond,
Okay. So you notice in the pictures that you're giving me, how many of these pictures have a smell or a color or a feel? Does anybody have one that has a smell, a color, or a feel?
color,
Yeah.
bright color, field, electricity.
Okay.
I'd make my
So
phone
electricity does have a color. I would assume for the most part with diagrams and whatnot, it's pretty kind of dead. Now the reason that I use this word, whether it's optimized, systemized, I mean I could go through all these words we use, synergy, is that you have to understand that even though these words are corporately correct, they're left brain words and they're dead words. And so I just cringe when people use these to describe their goals and KPIs, right? They always a complaint. Nobody understands what we have. We have too many KPIs. One of the main problems is that we're using left brain words to describe our measurements. And so they're not memorable and people get stuck. If you replace your left brain action words, I go back to this slide here with increase, with right brain words, it sticks in people's brain. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to move on from this, but I hope you guys enjoy that little exercise. Okay, because I'm going to fall behind. Okay, so anyway, so the person who asked me to right brain, left brain, did that exercise explain what I meant?
I forget who asked.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It did. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. And by the way, guys, this research is online. You can go look it up. There's a lot of different words you could replace, incorporate. Like I said, instead of saying reduce, you could say cut or trim. There's a visual there with a scissors. Instead of saying increase, you could say boost or, we just did grow. So one thing I would make sure is that another way to enhance your KPIs and make them memorable to get people to take action is to try to use right brain words for the action. So that's the point of that. Okay. The third part about this now is telling a story. So the interesting part about this is that storytelling, as of 2019, has been deemed one of the hottest things since, if you go through a number of the different trends for BI, storytelling is somewhere between number 4 to number 8, okay, if you go online. Now, when it comes to telling a story, however, one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the vendors put storytelling as just putting charts on the screen. I don't quite agree with that. So I'm going to share you guys something that might be slightly different, but we found that this works. So what is a good data story? Well, if you read this quote, it says data analysis isn't about graphics and visualizations. It's about telling a story. Very important. Look at data the way a detective examines a crime scene. Try to understand what happened, what evidence needs to be collected. The visualization, it can be a chart, map, or single number, will come naturally once the mystery is solved, but the focus is the story. So this is from Facts Are Sacred. It's a book by Simon Rogers, but I think it's something that we all can live by and adhere to and understand, right? Because we kind of get caught up in the visuals and are they pretty and telling a story? That's not the most important part. So I've been preaching this now for maybe 5 to 8 years that telling compelling data stories is the future. I think we're here now. But the thing that I want to emphasize is that you must get beyond the trend, okay? So let me share with you the 4 parts to a compelling story. Number 1 is you have something called your snapshot. Your snapshot actually has in what we call your goal and KPIs, and I'll show you guys in detail this, don't worry. Number 2 is you have your trends. Number 3 is you have your forecast, and then you have your actions or your solutions, okay? So I'll leave this on here for a minute for those of you who may be writing notes or kind of taking that in. So there's 4 parts to a compelling story that you must have. You have to have your snapshot, which is your goal and KPIs. You have to have your trends, then your forecast, then your solutions. Now, a big issue that we see is if you look at number 2, and this is why I said get beyond the trend, is that due to number 1, asking the wrong questions, not having actionable KPIs, and a round of other issues, most of the visualizations today are just trends. So what's the problem with this? How many of you think this is a great data visualization? Oops, I was supposed to take off the vendor, but if the vendor doesn't matter, you can do this in Power BI. How many of you think this is a great visualization? Anybody? Okay. One person, right? And so you probably think it's great because it's attractive, but there's a bit of an issue here, right? What this basically has is a bunch of trends. So let me give you guys a golden nugget to write down. Visualizations, unlike reports, are supposed to give people answers. Very, very important. Okay. And so the issue that I have, and it kind of drives me nuts, is when you go online and you look at most of the visualizations, most of them are just trends. There is nothing actionable in them. So if you only have trends, what you're doing is you're giving the user more work. What that leads to, guys, is the user then takes this, they hit export of the data, they go into Excel, and they go into pivot table nirvana, right? To figure out how to do their job.
Yep.
Okay, so this is really, really important. So make sure that when you're building data stories, and I see this a lot, everybody's focused on just the trends, guys. You actually have to have these other parts, which I'll talk about. So again, I show an example here, which is I picked another random dashboard. I don't want to point out Power BI, but this one is also just trends. Okay, it's beautiful to look at. I'm not really sure what's actionable on here. Okay, and this is typically what 99.9% looks like. And this is one of the reasons why I think BI continues to struggle and users are going, why is this not working? So I put 90%, I think it's 99% of dashboards are trends. They literally are only showing history and they have zero action. So keep this in mind. If you are building something that is keeping your decision maker in the rear view mirror, it is useless. This is really important. If all you're showing them is what happened, this makes no sense. So let me have you guys write down 3 questions on your sheet. If you guys are taking notes, tell me when you're ready. I'm going to give you 3 things that I want you to make sure you answer on every visualization you build in Power BI. You guys ready?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Very simple. You have the what? Simple question. The what? You have the so what? And then you have the now what. So today, most of you, I can guarantee, not to any fault of your own, this is why the industry is evolving, are answering the what, but you're losing your users because you never answer the so what, and most people don't even think about the now what, right? So the question is, what happened? Why do I care? That's a so what. And then what do I do, right? That's the action and now what. So keep those. I don't have time to delve in because I know we're running time here. I'm just making sure. But keep in mind that those are the 3 things. If you want your visualizations to be powerful, those 3 questions need to be answered, okay? So I start here and I go in high level into what do you need to create a compelling story. So I'll show you here. Again, I'll do it very quickly. So you want to make sure that you start with your top 3 KPIs and you want to segment into sections. So let me show you a good example here. Do you remember how I showed you guys those sections? This is a good example here of where you have the snapshot on the left with the KPIs. You have your trend in the middle, which is showing how things are trending. And then you actually have your action. Now, to make this simple, another giveaway I'm going to give you guys is what we call our visual storyboard. I'll give you guys a way to join our community and you'll see how this works. But if you're interested in creating these stories, we have hundreds of people doing it, well, probably thousands at this point across the world. I'm also going to give Wes our free storyboard that you guys could use. And you can use this to basically put in your goal on the top here. This is where your goal goes. You see the for you. These are your top KPIs. You then ask if your KPIs are not on target, then you say, here's how I get my trends, and then you basically have your actions. So I will give this to Wes for you guys. Does anybody find good use of this? I'm actually going to give you guys a brand new one for 2019. Does anybody have use for this and helping them with generating their story?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So what this does again, guys, is we typically use Post-its, and let me slow down a bit because this is recorded. On the top portion here, we working with users or even with ourselves, we identify our goal, we write it in Post-its. We then come here in the current state, and then and by the way, I'm giving you the new one, so it's a bit more polished. It then asks, okay, within our, what happened to my mouse? Sorry. Within our current state, this is where you identify your KPIs. So the question you ask here is, where are you right now, right? That's your top KPIs. Then once you have your top KPI, you then go, look, if our KPI is not on target, then why? And so the why is where you have the trends, which is typically, again, most people only focus on here. Then you have your actions on how to fix it here, which is what actions do we need to fix the trends. And then we have something called your visual response, which is you basically just describe how you'd visualize all of this to make sure that you're targeting it. So I'm going through it high level. You guys are going to have the recording, but I am going to give Wes a storyboard so you guys could use this. And when you guys, I'm going to tell you guys how to join our live Facebook community. You'll actually see people in the community using it in real time. It's kind of fun, but this makes creating the data story a lot easier because it kind of creates the format that you need to follow. Okay. Now just be warned. Typically when you're working with users, most users only have a ton of trends. I just want to warn you that you're going to find yourself having to say, okay, I have all these trends, which is great, but let's go back up and actually get a KPI. You know, let's go back up and talk about a goal. Just be warned. A lot of users, all that they're going to give you when you ask them is the trends, and you want to make sure you don't build any of that. That's why user adoption is so low. Okay, let's move on from here. So what are the tips for this? So a couple of tips when it comes to telling a story. Number one, stick to answering the questions for each section. So what do I mean by that? On the storyboard, I'm going to give you even the updated one. The questions are on the side. Do not deviate from these questions. That's number one. Number two is you notice the storyboard does not have any visuals. This is really important. Before you get to visualization, remember I talked about making your visuals powerful and easy to create. You want to make sure that you create the story and it's correct before you actually add visuals. And the other thing is you want to make sure that your story is short and sweet. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. I'm almost done. Is there any questions? This is really, really important. Any questions?
I'm not seeing anything online. We got one in the back, actually.
Yeah, I guess one question about like where you're starting point. So you talk a lot about like setting a story, but like if you're creating a data visualization, you kind of do already have a bias in that you already know what story you want to tell, and like typically you're kind of working back from there. It's like, oh, I want to prove that, hey, my department does need money and we can save the company a lot of money if we do this. So then you're kind of, in the end, you're just framing the data to show that. And like, so if you make that statement, somebody else is going to make the statement, oh, that's not true, because you're framing the data to be biased for your own initiative, right?
Correct.
So when that happens, what do you do?
So that's why we recommend before, because part of the reason why bias kicks in, besides the obvious, right? You just want to get your story to work or to prove what you have. We find that taking a step back without the visuals, without even getting into the tool and really defining. So your goal there would be, you know, your hypothesis is, you know, we're losing or by increasing sales, we can generate more. I would highly recommend going down this step, which is, okay, now that I know what my hypothesis or goal is, what do I need to actually measure to make sure that's true? If it's not on target, then why? And then if not, what's the actions? I highly recommend still going through this process, because what we found is that by working, and this is not just us, these are thousands of students across the world, is that the storyboard tends to present gaps very quickly. Right? Because like you said, with that one sentence, you go in and you're kind of pulling whatever looks good. If you sit down and you frame the story, you tend, because we've done it before with a lot of customers, you'll find some gaps, right? And say, you know, this isn't tying in, like I can't get down to an action, or these trends are not making sense. So I highly recommend that you take it first, throw it on the storyboard, make sure it's clean, make sure as well that you could pitch it. You notice I said that it has to be short and sweet. Make sure you can easily pitch it to someone. This is what I'm measuring. This is why it would be off target. Here's the actions. And once they can understand it and it's clear, then I would go forward. I wouldn't do it before that. And I say that kindly because I started off as a data scientist. So I was very much in a hypothesis world. And so part of the creation of this was I wanted, coming into BI, I wanted to have people to really frame their story because I know how easy it is to be biased, right? And trying to create something. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
And by the way, I know it can be hard to take a step back. Don't get me wrong. When you have something in your brain, it's, let's go, I have the data, but it's very valuable to just go, look, let me just check this, see if I have any gaps. This is not, no, I'm writing it down. It's not quite tying in, the way it should. And it really is valuable. So it's a really good question. Okay. Any other questions on the story before I move forward? We're almost done here. I know I'm trying to be cognizant of time. Any other questions? We're good? Okay, so that was the last point, which is your story should be short and sweet. Let me elaborate on that. If you use a storyboard, you should be able to tell anybody 90 seconds, maybe nothing more than 5 minutes, the entire story. If you are struggling to do that, your story is overcomplicated and your visual is going to be complicated. So very important stuff. If you can't do short and sweet, you got to go back to the drawing board and really simplify this. Otherwise, please don't start building something because it's not going to go well. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at an example of what it looks like before a story and after a story. So I like this quote. It says, good design is simple and easy to understand. So let's take an example. This is an example of a real dashboard from a client. And you could see here, there's a lot going on. And so this is the dashboard, quote unquote, before the story. This is the same dashboard after the story. Now, if you look on here, you notice here that we did a bunch of redesign, and I'm going to show you guys some principles of design to end this, right? Because I know you want to get to design, but I have to deal with this stuff before you get here. But we have some core principles when it comes to building dashboards. You have a header, you have a navigation, you have a body, and a footer. Now, let me explain to you what goes into these main areas, okay? So when we do design, and we're known, I have award-winning dashboards that we've built. These are the 4 areas that we focus on. Oh my gosh, I have a number 3 as 4. Guys, I'm a designer. The type, I don't, grammar is not my thing. Anyway, so sorry about the double number 3 there. It's supposed to be number 4. So the 4 sections when starting is first you have your header, then you have your footer, then you have your navigation, and then your body. Those are the 4, and you build them in that order. So what do I mean by this? So let's look at this example of a dashboard. So you see on the top, you have your header, right? In the middle, you have your body. Then on the left, you have your navigation. I'm sorry, you have your header, your navigation, you have your body, and you see you have your footer. So let's take a look at what goes into each section, because a lot of people tend to overlook this, right? In the header, you basically want to have your logo. You want to have a title. Now, in some cases, if you're in a portal, let's say you port your Power BI over to a custom portal, it may already have a logo. If not, we just recommend that, remember, people are going to screenshot stuff. This is just important for branding. You want to make sure you have the title. And then in some cases, you want to make sure you have some level of help for the UI. Though within Power BI, they tend to have all the buttons on the side, so you should be fine. And then you could potentially put a welcome text. We tend to like to call people's names or at least say welcome. It sounds crazy, but it's a personable thing. So if you look here again on the header part on the top here, you could see we actually have the name here. And on the right, we just have a few buttons. Like I said, on this one, we have the reset and print that's customized. Within most tools, all you would need is about and the help. And that really gives people a feel that they're in a tool that they could use. The second part is the footer. And the footer is something that in building, and a lot of people overlook this in visualization, it's important to put this stuff because people do screenshot these things and they travel. Very simply, you want to make sure that you at least have a copyright in the bottom with a date. Very simple stuff, but I see tons of visualizations that don't have them. The reason why this is important, in our opinion, is things get screenshot and then they disappear. So this is a bit of an old screenshot of a dashboard, but you want to make sure that you have that, okay? The other thing now is navigation. So we tend to put navigation in only 2 areas on a dashboard ever. This is very important, okay? So you want to have your navigation for pages or your filters to drill down. Navigation, guys, let me show you, should either be across here or on the left. Nothing else.
Nico,
Yeah.
we had a question in the room. You were on Twitter.
Oh, what was the thing other than copyright on the footer?
So so to get into, again, I high level this. So on the footer, we put copyright. We put the last report update time. So we have timestamps on the footer. Sometimes we put versions. There are people that want to know. Sometimes we put built by. Sometimes we put who to contact sometimes. So we always have the copyright in the center. On the right, we commonly have the report update. On the left, you could put, as I said, a number of, contact Mico at blah, blah, blah. Contact with questions. You could put, let me see what else we put on there. We put where to get help. We put the version. I mentioned that. We put that in the bottom. And that's it.
I put disclaimers. Is that what you advise that, Nico?
A what? You put
legal.
what?
If legal says I need a disclaimer, this information is intended only for blah 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 whoever.
Correct. Absolutely. That's yes. And we also put the legal disclaimers. If and that's great that they do that. If they have it on the bottom, put it on there. But again, the reason is people screenshot, right? So you just want to make sure. I've actually seen a company get sued from using someone's information and ignoring the copyright. They got $30 million. So you can put your legal disclaimer on the bottom. But one thing to notice is, you see how thin this footer is? You want to keep it notice the font is maybe like a 9. I can be very specific with design. You want to keep it very clean. It's not supposed to take over anything. So it needs to be just very succinct. Okay, then you have the body. So what goes in the body? Very simple. These are your KPIs, your text and your charts. Again, I don't think people have issues with this. Most people know what happens in the body, but the areas where I see messiness is I see people put navigation on the bottom right, on the right-hand side. People read in a Z format, okay? So navigation either belongs across the middle on the top where I showed you or on the left. Do not deviate from this, pretty please. Our brain does not read it like that. Okay, now I want to show you guys one more. So this is a good example of a dashboard. This is not a bad dashboard, I should say, but basically after telling the story, and this is in Power BI, this is still a little bit busy, but this is the exact same dashboard. So you could see here, I kind of tore it up a little bit. I said there's a header. There's no navigation, but this is the body and this is the footer. So it's just an example. You notice on the top we put questions. I did cut off the footer here just for legal purposes. There is a footer, whoever asked that question, but this is actually a client. It is white label, but there's a client copyright, so I cut it off. But this is an example of a dashboard that's kind of showing the before and after. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to leave you guys with. The first one is not to move forward with without an actionable goal. I should probably add KPIs, metrics. If it's not actionable, don't move forward. The second tip that I want to give, I didn't elaborate on this, is you remember how I gave you guys that storyboard? I gave you guys a lot of steps to work with your users, which is really important. One thing you have to remember, if you define it, you are going to have to own it. What does that mean? This is really important. When you ask the user questions around their KPIs, when you go to the storyboard and you work with them and you say, current state is this or this, and you could work by yourself, but if you're working with them, if you give them the answer, you have just lost the ownership game. So even if you know the answer, remember, it's called Cállate la boca, shut your mouth. Do not help the users. If you define it, you own it. And by the way, I have huge testimonials from people that said, I saved their BI life. They literally implemented this one thing and it changed their entire project. So pretty please, we're all smart people. You know the data, but you have to let the users come up with it. Otherwise, you're going to fail. I can tell you this from experience. Okay, so with that said, I think, how am I doing on time, Wes? Am I okay?
You're fine. Yep, good.
Okay, good. Just checking here. Yeah. Okay, so with that said, there's two things. One, I wanted to leave chance for questions. I know I gave quite a bit of information. And two, for people who want more, I don't want to make this salesy, but people do find me online and ask the question. If you just go to bibrains.com and products, for those of you who either want to spend 3 days with me on a live workshop, or you want to just join our online community or whatever, just go to bibrains and products. Everything is there. I have a ton of free resources. Now, I don't have the freebies I'm going to give Wes to give you. So that's going to be very private and separate just for you guys. But there are a ton of other free resources on there, so you can feel free. And there's also a link to join our Facebook community, which is only about storytelling. I believe we were given away our Power BI templates. I will need to see if we still have those available. I believe we were updating them for 2019. But if you join the community, you get all the updates and all that stuff, because we actually have a bunch of Power BI templates where we implement kind of this story structure, and then we were giving it out. So if you have any questions, you can email us, and we'd be happy to help. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and take questions now. I hope there's good questions. By the way, did this help anybody? Did you guys learn anything today?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I didn't sit down and tell you how to build pretty charts, but I could give you references for stuff. I love the ending product, but I just feel like it's so critical that we get the beginning right. Because if you guys take this advice, which I hope you will, and you transform your KPIs, it is going to make visualization so much easier. And this was like an epiphany I had 8 years ago when I was teaching people how to create prettier charts. Right? Like I realized it's not the chart that's the problem. It's the freaking name of the KPI. So I'm very passionate about getting that together. Even the guy who asked me about the cognitive bias, if you follow the story structure, it'll pull out the gaps, and then you have a solid story and then go forward. Otherwise, as I said, you can get into, the never ending color discussion. You can get into analysis paralysis. You could get into producing a bunch of trends, and then the business is going, can I get an export to Excel? And you're thinking, really? So I just sat down here and built an export tool. I mean, it right? How many of you have had that problem? Like you slave over it. What's the first question? Do you have an export to Excel? Anybody have that experience?
I deliberately, when I demonstrate on Power BI, there's a slide in our slide deck that says this is how you export to Excel. I hide that slide and I don't tell people.
Yeah.
I hate it. That's what the tool's for.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, for me, that spoke to me immediately, because again, it's for us. It's a lot of building these trends about trying to understand where we're going. But again, it's the idea of getting to what are we trying to do? What's the action behind that? So I really love the framework.
Yeah, and again, I didn't, like I said, I was asking Wes before. I said, should I tell them? Because I didn't want to come in here and sell anything. I figure if you guys want something, you'll find it, like our online course and stuff like that. But if you go online, you see people posting testimonials. One guy wrote yesterday that it saved him a third. He said he finished his project. What did he say? 3 times faster than normal by just going through the process, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive to take a step back, but if you just take a step back, it really does save time. And going back to my export to Excel, like, one of my pet peeves is building people bona fide export to Excel tools. I'm like, dude, listen, you could have did that without me. Like, I didn't need to build a visual for you to hit export to Excel. Like, you could have did that without me. So I get a little frustrated. My whole goal is to prevent that stuff, create the action on there so that it's gluey, right? Notice I gave you right brain words. Make it sticky and memorable. They won't need to export to Excel, but you have to give people answers. You have to create the story.
Mico, I think the navigation, the topic that you were showing on navigation went by a little bit too fast for me.
Oh,
could you back up and show that slide again? I just missed it.
Oh, and by the way, I will go through it, but you will get the deck, right, Wes?
Yes, I'll be happy to share that out.
Yeah, I'll give you guys.
So you got header and then footer, and go forward to the navigation.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. So I kind of winced over it. Sorry, but I did it really fast. So in the navigation, yeah, sorry about that. This is where you either have your tabs, your drop-down menus, your radio buttons, your other types of menus, right? So it's the what, and then the medium is what type. So this is where you have any type of navigation, and you heard what I said. It's either across below the header or on the left. Nowhere else. Very important. Just, you know, people put it in the bottom right. It just drives me nuts. People's brains, this is not the way we read. Go to any good website. You'll see the navigation is exactly what I'm telling you. Just think of a backward L. Okay, I have some exceptions. Are you ready now? So sometimes we put icons within little tiles in order for people to click to go to drill down. We did that in Power BI just the other day, okay? So there's little exceptions, but we use icons to do that stuff. I didn't go deep into the weeds here. That can go within a tile. I'm not a big fan, however, of putting in all these multiple drop-down menus in tiles. It's analysis paralysis. So did that cover it? Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, we got an affirmative on the question being answered there. I've got a question for you. Slicers or filters or parameters, whatever you want to call this. How much interaction would you recommend allowing users on a dashboard?
So I've recently been forced to put up to 8 drop-down menus on a dashboard. When I say forced, like just horribly screaming, kicking, you know, just what can you do when it comes from the top? The preference is that you keep it down to 2 to 3.
Okay.
Yeah, the preference. Go ahead.
My question would be, if you, in terms of if you define it, you own it. Would you put in your FAQ who owns those KPIs?
Oh yeah, we have a whole sheet for that. Absolutely, we have a whole use case and sheet about that. So there's 2 ways to do it, right? Remember I told you about icons. Do you guys see question marks on there next to those labels? You see those question marks? They're kind of small. Yes. Sorry. Does everybody see them?
Move your mouse next to them.
Is it here? You see it or no? See them?
Yes.
Okay, so when you click on these, and this is obviously highly decorated, when you click on these, they actually open up and give you the definition of that KPI and the owner.
And the owner.
And the owner, yeah, and that's not always available.
Your name should never appear in any of those, or our name should never appear in any of those.
No, you want users. I have a free teaching on that. Yeah, no. IT, if you define it, I'm telling you, this is like the bad pimple from prom. It just doesn't go away. Yeah, and the problem with that is, right, is that you guys know, typically when you put up a dashboard initially, there's questions about the data. The reason why we realized this, and this took a lot of testing, is that we realized that when something was wrong, they kept blaming the IT team. And we're like, what is going on? The minute that we let them define it, we weren't getting blamed anymore.
I have another question if you have time.
No, go ahead.
In your three questions for visualization, it's the what and the so what the know what, as in KNOW.
No, yeah, now what? So your what? If we look at now what? Yeah, NOW. So if we look at the questions here, remember how I gave you guys the sections to the story? So let me put this into context. Sorry, guys. Sorry about the crazy going through here. Okay, if you look at these sections for the story, let me put it into context for you. The what is going to be your snapshot, which is your KPIs, right? And that's going to be your goal and your KPIs. Your so what is going to be your trends and your forecast, your trends, right? Which is why did this happen, right? And then your forecast, which is this is where you're going to end up if you don't change anything. Your now what is going to be your actions, which is how do we fix this? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so that's where so the first one, the what is number 1, the so what is number 2, right? And number 3, and then the now what is number 4, which is your solutions or actions. That's how it fits into the story. And by the way, just to add a little bit of flair, if all you answer is the what, guarantee you they're exporting to Excel to figure out the so what. Just be warned. And if all you do is the what and so what, they're still exporting to Excel to figure out how to do the now what, which is what do I need to do with this data. Okay, any other questions? That was a really good question. Oh, let me show you here.
So you mentioned that you have an online course and a live course.
I do. So there's for people, if anybody wants to take this to the next level and join our community, I'm going to give you guys a few ways. So first of all, you could connect with me online. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, so I put my LinkedIn here, and sometimes on Twitter. I'm not on there as much anymore. Are any of you on Facebook? Anybody on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So if you write this down, just type in BI Data Storytelling Mastery. That's our Facebook group. There's about 700 people on there, and all we do is focus on this. Now, if you want to come to one of my trainings, if you want to do the online course, just go back to this link that I sent you. This link, bibrains.com/products. You'll basically see everything there, and you'll see that the online course is closed for enrollment. We should be opening it up in a few weeks, but you can put your name in. And in the live workshops, that is by, I wouldn't say invitation only, but we have people apply to come to the workshops. That's basically kind of spending 3 days with me, hot up in Atlanta. Kind of rewiring your mind, but you can just click in there and put in your name, and someone from my team will be in touch. Yeah, it kind of fries your brain, but you come up with a completely different perspective, doing completely different stuff. We have a lot of success stories on that. So what we do is we basically teach the end-to-end formula. So it's a bit of a bath in hot water. Okay. Any other questions?
I don't see anyone else online. Any more questions there? Anyone else in the room?
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, guys. So feel free to keep in touch. I'm online.